The morning air felt fresh and cool, bringing with it the earthy scent of wet soil and pine trees. The sun began to peek through the branches, casting long shadows across the peaceful countryside. As I strolled through the tall grass in the field behind our house, still damp with dew, I suddenly caught a faint sound. It was a soft, trembling cry. My heart raced as I followed the noise, carefully making my way through thick patches of brambles and wildflowers. Then, nestled in a pile of leaves, I found Luna, a tiny kitten, only 6 days old, weak and shivering. My panic surged. Maxine and I had talked about getting a cat, but never under these circumstances. Could I manage to save her? I gently picked up Luna, her little body trembling like a leaf in the breeze. Her fur was matted and soaked, dirty from lying in the cold ground. I could barely feel her tiny form in my hands, and her bones felt fragile. She was smaller than I had ever anticipated a kitten could be at this age, and her half-open eyes stared back at me, glazed with exhaustion. I could see she was fighting for her life, but each weak breath only intensified my worry. She wasn't safe yet. I hurried back to the house, my heart racing in my chest. The sound of gravel crunching under my boots felt loud in the quiet morning as the weight of my responsibility pressed down on me. Sunlight filtered through the trees, bathing the overgrown yard in a golden glow, yet everything felt strange and surreal. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. Time was of the essence. Kittens this small needed warm surroundings. Maxine was still fast asleep, wrapped up snugly in our small bed, her steady breathing comforting to hear. For a moment, I wished I could join her in that peaceful space. But instead, I gently placed Luna on the kitchen counter, the cool surface contrasting against my warm hands as I scrambled to find a towel and warm it up. I felt rushed, knowing that I had to act fast, but unsure how quickly I needed to work. With my heart in my throat, I grabbed my phone and dialed Sophie, the local vet. Each ring felt painfully slow, and my anxiety grew with every sound as I looked down at the little kitten whose faint mews were a constant reminder of my uncertainty. When Sophie finally answered, her voice was a relief. "Jonas, what's going on?" Her voice was steady, but I could sense she was preparing for what I was about to share. "I found a kitten. She's 6 days old, and she's not doing well. She's cold and weak, hardly moving. I'm trying to keep her warm, but I'm not sure if it's enough." Sophie paused, the silence feeling heavy. "Okay, stay calm. You did the right thing by bringing her inside. Keep her warm and ensure she stays hydrated. But you need to get her here as soon as you can." I felt a slight sense of relief, though it wasn't enough. I looked back at Luna, bundled in a towel on the counter. She was still breathing, but it was shallow and slow. In the other room, Maxine stirred, her voice muffled under the covers. "What's going on?" she asked, the sleep still evident in her tone. "I found a kitten," I explained as I walked towards the bedroom. "She's in trouble. I need to get her to Sophie." Maxine sat up, rubbing her eyes. She glanced at me and then at the kitten. "You know, I'm not exactly sure how to handle this, but I'm here for you." Although her words were unsure, they offered a kind of support I hadn't known I needed. Maxine's uncertainty mirrored my own. We had no idea what lay ahead, but we were committed to doing everything possible for Luna. The drive to Sophie's clinic felt endless. I kept looking in the rearview mirror at Luna, still cradled in the towel, her small body hardly moving. Outside, the world blurred as we navigated the winding roads. Maxine sat quietly beside me, her hand occasionally resting on mine, but even that gentle touch couldn't calm the whirlwind of questions in my mind. Upon arrival, Sophie took Luna from my arms, her hands quick yet gentle. "She's in bad shape," Sophie said as she examined the kitten, concern etched on her brow. "This is a critical time for kittens, especially if they're abandoned. She may not survive the night." A cold wave washed over me as her words hit home. I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath me. I had known Luna was fragile, but hearing the reality felt more daunting than I had expected. I had poured so much into caring for this kitten, and now I stood at a crossroads, unsure of the next move. Maxine stood nearby, watching us with a blend of worry and frustration. "What happens if she doesn't make it?" Her voice had a quiet intensity. It was clear that she was facing the uncertainty of the situation, just as I was. Sophie's eyes locked with mine, and for a brief moment, the weight of our decision felt almost overwhelming. "We do everything we can," Sophie said. But I can't promise anything. As Sophie began her work, Maxine and I stood a bit to the side. The tension between us was palpable. I could see doubt flickering in her eyes. She was trying to stay hopeful, but the uncertainty seemed to gnaw at her. I felt the same way, but I couldn't let that show, not in front of Maxine and definitely not in front of Luna. Finally, Maxine spoke, her voice trembling just a bit. Jonas, what if we're doing all this for nothing? What if it's too late? She crossed her arms, her gaze locked on the kitten lying motionless on the exam table. I wanted to reassure her, to say something comforting, but the words stuck in my throat. What if she was right? What if I was trying to save a life that was already beyond reach? I swallowed hard, pushing the doubt deep down. We have to try. We owe her that chance. Sophie raised her gaze from her work, letting out a soft sigh. It's a tough decision, Jonas. If she pulls through, it will be a miracle. But we can't give up on her without trying everything we can. I nodded, but the uncertainty lingered like a shadow. Looking over at Maxine, I saw a blend of concern and frustration on her face. I knew she loved animals, but this felt different. This wasn't just a stray we could simply release later. This was a fragile life, hanging by a thin thread. We'll figure it out, I whispered to her, though inside, I questioned if I truly believed that. As the minutes stretched into what felt like hours, Sophie worked quietly but steadily. The clinic was a small, busy place, filled with the low hum of machines and the occasional click of a keyboard. I could hear her murmuring to herself as she checked Luna's vital signs, the steady beeps of the monitors punctuating the silence. Maxine and I sat near the window, with morning sunlight casting long shadows across the room. Yet, even that light couldn't lift the heaviness in the air. I kept glancing at Sophie, hoping for a sign, any sign that Luna was improving. But there was nothing. Then a sharp knock on the door broke my train of thought. Pierre, our neighbor, stepped inside, his usually gruff demeanor softened by concern in his eyes. I heard you were here with the kitten, he said in a deep voice that was surprisingly gentle. I thought I'd drop by. I've faced something like this before. I might have a few tips to share. Maxine and I exchanged looks. Pierre wasn't known for stepping outside his farm life, so seeing him here felt unexpected. Still, I appreciated the company. I'm glad you came, I replied, even if I wasn't sure how much help he could provide. But as he began to share his past experiences with animals, it became clear that his visit wasn't just about giving advice. It was his way of offering support. Although the weight of my decision still lingered, Pierre's presence made it feel a bit lighter, at least for a moment. Time seemed to stretch indefinitely. Luna lay there, her tiny body barely moving as she breathed in shallow, irregular patterns. The air felt thick, despite the steady hum of the air conditioner. I focused on her, my thoughts conflicted. Every time I reached out to check on her, I felt her fragility, as if she might break from even the slightest touch. In the corner, Maxine had been quiet for some time. She gazed out the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, as if trying to hold her own thoughts together. Finally, she broke the silence, her voice soft yet heavy with emotion. Jonas, what if we're doing this for ourselves? What if we just can't accept that she might not make it? Her words struck me deeply, making my stomach twist. Was she right? Was I desperately trying to save this little life out of my own need to feel useful or impactful? I glanced back at Luna, so delicate and still. A tight knot formed in my chest. Was it selfish to consider letting her go now, to end her struggle? Or was it more selfish to keep her alive when the chances of recovery were slim? These thoughts gnawed at me, as if I were peering over a cliff, not knowing whether to leap or retreat. As the hours passed, a growing sense of unease settled in. The clinic, once filled with bright energy, now felt heavy, filled with the soft tick-tock of clocks and Sophie's quiet murmurs as she continued tending to her tasks. Every time I checked on Luna, I held my breath, hoping for any sign of improvement. Yet time and again, I found her tiny body appearing weaker. Then, something unexpected happened. Sophie stepped away briefly, leaving Maxine and me alone with Luna. In that moment, I saw it, a small, faint movement in Luna's paws. At first, I thought it was my mind playing tricks on me, but I soon saw it again, a twitch, subtle but undeniable. I leaned in closer, my heart racing. "Maxine, look!" I whispered, cautious that saying it out loud might break the spell. She moved. Maxine hurried to my side, her eyes wide with cautious hope. Is that a good sign? I wasn't sure. I couldn't tell if that tiny movement meant anything significant or if it was merely a fleeting response to the medication Sophie had given her. But the way Luna twitched her paw, almost as if she was trying to hang on, made me think there might still be a glimmer of hope. Yet, this left me wondering, what did that mean for us? If we continued to fight for her, would we just be prolonging her suffering? I ran my hand through my hair, feeling the weight of that decision intensifying with every passing moment. The days blended into one another. Luna's condition remained delicate, fluctuating between hope and despair. Each morning, Sophie would check in and adjust the care plan, while Maxine and I worked to keep Luna warm, fed, and as comfortable as possible. The atmosphere in the house was tense, between Maxine and me, and even between us and Sophie. We were all so focused on Luna's struggle that we often forgot to take care of ourselves. Our emotions were raw, and the uncertainty wore on us. It wasn't just Luna who was fragile. Maxine and I were too. I noticed her moments of quiet reflection becoming more frequent, and I could see her pulling away at times, perhaps emotionally preparing herself for the worst. She was frightened, not just for Luna, but for us. How would we handle losing this tiny creature that had somehow become an integral part of our lives? I was also wrestling with my feelings. There were instances when I felt like I was investing my heart into something with no future, no hope of survival. But then, just when I thought I couldn't carry the weight any longer, I would catch Luna's tiny eyes looking up at me, her frail body still battling, and I knew I couldn't walk away. Milo, our other cat, seemed to notice that things had changed around the house. Since Luna arrived, his usual independence had softened a bit. He would sit nearby, quietly watching her from the corner of the room, almost like he was keeping an eye out for her. It made me wonder if he was trying to understand the whirlwind we were all experiencing. Caring for Luna had transformed into something much more significant than just tending to a kitten. It was about the connections we were forming, the decisions we faced, and the uncertainty of how it would all turn out. As Luna's health went up and down, the atmosphere in the house grew heavy. We found ourselves trapped between two difficult choices. Should we keep fighting for her life, or should we consider letting her go peacefully? Sophie had been incredibly patient, offering her advice and updates. Still, I could sense her frustration building as well. She wanted to see Luna get better, but the truth was hard to face. Luna was struggling, and her tiny body didn't seem strong enough to battle the illness that had taken hold. One evening, while sitting beside Luna's bed, the weight of the decision crashed over me like a wave. I felt drained, physically and emotionally. Maxine had also become quieter lately, pulling inward as the situation wore both of us down. We were lost, unsure of how to move forward. That's when Sophie brought up a tough conversation. "Jonas, I need to be honest with you," she said, her tone steady yet kind. "We have two choices now. We can continue trying to nurse Luna back to health, but there's no certainty she will make it. Or we could think about letting her go. It's a difficult choice, but sometimes that can be the kindest option." Maxine, who had been silently observing from the doorway, stepped closer. "I believe we need to think about what's best for her," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "I love her too, but I don't want to see her suffer any longer." I looked at them both, caught between my hope to save Luna and the painful possibility that perhaps it was best to let her go. The next few days felt like a blur filled with quiet disagreements, unspoken worries, and a heavy sense of guilt. Maxine and I found ourselves at odds more than usual. She seemed convinced that letting Luna go was the right thing to do, that it was time to end the struggle and let the little kitten rest. But I wasn't ready to make that decision. Not yet. Not while there was still a spark of life in her, no matter how faint it seemed. Our conversations intensified, filled with a sense of urgency, and each word felt heavier than the last. Maxine, always practical and grounded, had a gentler side that she rarely showed. It was clear that this situation was taking its toll on her. She didn't want to witness Luna's suffering anymore, and I understood her pain. Yet, I held on to an inexplicable hope that perhaps Luna would recover, that this time things might turn out differently. One evening, Sophie visited to check on Luna, and the atmosphere was tense. "You both need to make a decision," she said softly, looking back and forth between Maxine and me. "It's unfair to keep her in this uncertain state." Maxine's gaze met mine, her eyes reflecting deep sadness. "I just can't watch her suffer anymore, Jonas. It's too much." Her words struck me hard, resonating in the stillness that followed. My heart ached. I felt the heavy burden of the decision weighing on me, but the truth was, I didn't know what the right choice was. Was I fighting for Luna, or was I simply seeking comfort for myself? The night before we had to decide, sleep eluded me. I sat beside Luna's bed, watching her struggle for each breath, each movement a struggle for such a tiny creature. Her once soft fur had turned brittle and matted, and her little body shook despite the warmth of the blanket. I could see how hard she was trying to hold on, but it was clear that this fight was exhausting her. The reality of her condition became undeniable. Maxine slept in the other room, her breathing calm and gentle. I longed to find solace in the quiet, but the weight of our decision felt like a stone pressing on my chest. It became apparent that we couldn't keep Luna in this state indefinitely. Whether I wanted to admit it or not, I had to confront what the future might hold for her. The decision hovered over me, creating tension in every direction. Was it unkind to continue the fight for her life when a positive outcome seemed unlikely? Or was it even harsher to let her go, to end her brief life before it had truly begun? I sat in that quiet space for what felt like hours, my thoughts racing. And then a tiny mew broke the silence. It was a subtle sound, fragile yet persistent, and it made me pause. Luna was still fighting, still holding on to life in the most delicate way. Tears filled my eyes as I stood there, unsure of what to do next. The weight of our decision was heavy, and I realized that whatever choice we made would affect everything from that moment onward. The next morning, we reached a critical point. We couldn't delay any longer. In the kitchen, I found myself staring at the phone, Sophie's number already dialed. Maxine stood beside me, her face pale and her eyes red from lack of sleep. We hadn't exchanged many words since the night before, but I could sense the tension between us, growing with each passing second. "Sophie is waiting for us," I finally said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's time to make the decision, once and for all." At first, Maxine didn't respond. She simply nodded, her gaze drifting to Luna's little bed in the corner. The tiny kitten was still breathing, but her breaths were slow and shallow. A part of me clung to that small sign of life, hoping she might pull through, yet reality was hard to ignore. After a moment, Maxine spoke, her voice quivering. "Jonas, what if we're holding on to her for the wrong reasons? What if we're being selfish? What if she's suffering because we won't let go?" Her words hit me with unexpected force. I couldn't deny the truth in them. I felt the burden of our decision. I didn't want to be the one to make the final call, but we couldn't keep Luna trapped in this cycle of uncertainty and pain. Looking at Maxine, I realized we both understood the same truth. We had to let her go. I gently picked Luna up, cradling her in my hands one last time. "Goodbye, little one," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I hope you find peace." In the days that followed, life felt quiet and heavy. Maxine and I spent hours at the clinic with Sophie, holding Luna as she slipped away. It was a heartbreaking moment, and even now I could feel the ache in my chest. Letting go was the right choice, but that didn't make it easier. I remembered the tiny kitten I had held, fighting so hard for life, and I wondered if she knew, deep down, that we had tried our best. In the end, Luna's time with us was short, but her impact on our lives was profound. Saving her wasn't the only important thing. It was also about what she taught us, about love, the process of letting go, and the strength needed to make difficult choices, even when they hurt deeply. Maxine and I found comfort in the memories of the short time we spent with her. Those small moments of connection drew us closer together, even when we faced disagreements. Although it wasn't a perfect ending, it felt genuine. I've come to understand that sometimes the uncertainties in rescue and in life are what give it meaning. Not all rescues lead to a happy conclusion, but each journey leaves a lasting impression. Reflecting on Luna's brief life fills me with gratitude for the chance to have cared, loved, and said farewell. Have you ever felt a similar connection? If Luna's story resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please consider subscribing to the channel so we can keep sharing these meaningful experiences together. If animal rescue has touched your heart, feel free to share your stories in the comments below. I will return with more tales of both the difficulties and successes in helping animals in need. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more updates.